Welcome to the next episode of Slap That Ass podcast, the podcast by investors for investors. 2020 was a record-breaking year on so many levels, but definitely for finance. From record-breaking fires in Australia and California, negative oil prices, record-breaking bazooka moves by the Federal Reserve, down to the mundane habit changes. It was a year to be remembered. I want to go over record events, but instead we're going to go month by month and get everyone's take. I thought that certainly people wouldn't want to repeat 2020, but in a recent survey, it showed that half of people would rather answer spam calls and get root canals than repeat 2020. So I thought that was interesting. Now, let me tell you a little bit about my disclaimer. This podcast or any statements made on this podcast should not be interpreted as a recommendation to buy or sell securities. This is for educational and entertainment purposes only. We are definitely not licensed and we're not financial advisors. And what we do is fucking stupid. We do not know your personal financial situation, and instead you should seek out an advisor for your situation. You should assume that any security we mention may be held short or long on the podcast. Yes, and for the love of God, I own 1 share of Nikola as a legal hedge. In SEC filings, Trevor Milton cannot sue shareholders of the company or risk his pay packages or any other damages. So, let's introduce everybody so you can get to know. We have a new guest on our podcast, GosFather. He is from the UK and has a passion for history. So I'm hoping this is going to be a great addition. So who wants to go first?
Well, go with the guest, Goss.
All right, yeah. My name is GosFather. Yeah, I am not an investor by trade. I'm not a trader by trade. I'm here purely because I'm interested in financial history, something that I've always had an interest in. And just interesting to hear what you guys talk about and how 2020 will impact history and how it will go down, I suppose, is the best way to describe it.
Don't forget that you're a streamer, Goss.
Oh yes, I do stream on Twitch. It is not GosFather, it is GosFather80, so twitch.tv/GosFather80 if you ever want to catch me either speaking and ranting a load of old nonsense or playing video games.
Or singing Madonna.
They've retired it, Millennial. They've retired it. You can't do it anymore.
Is it really DMCA'd? Oh no.
I guess on that note, I'm Millennial. I trade dog shit. I 10 years in marketing, and I decided this year, when marketing essentially checked out for the year, I would give the market a shot. Took $2,200 and decided to turn it into over $50K. Excited for next year, but more excited to look back at all of the dog shit that was traded.
Next.
I guess I'll jump in. Exiled Investor. I am a long-term investor that for 2020 decided to turn into an absolute degenerate and start riding the hype. I have a background in digital marketing and real estate / construction. And until 2020, I usually favored larger cap stocks and tech companies.
I'm Redemption, and you guys know me as the guy who no one listens to. Talks conspiracy theory about the dark pools and like how they're out to get you and everything, and yeah, all the fun, crazy stuff. I mostly specialize in, I guess, mass psychology and stuff that would like trigger normal people who aren't traders and stuff like that. I don't know how to describe it more than that, other than I'm the conspiracy guy.
You're the dark pool mogul.
Huge shout out to the live studio audience as well, guys. We've got a great live studio audience in the Discord. If you guys don't know about the Discord, check the description wherever you're listening or watching this. We hang out there all the time, but there is a live studio audience as we do this insanity where people get to drop gifts and try to throw us off our game. So if you want to be one of them, check out the link down below.
Oh, God. So, just to introduce myself, I'm MartiniRita. I stream on Twitch and I invest for a living. I like to say, I guess I live in Airbnbs, and I have an educational background in systems engineering with a concentration in finance. Basically, just pricing out derivatives is most of what my degree was about, and data analytics. So now that we got that out of the way and you know everybody, let's talk about 2020. So I've got a great month-by-month breakdown. And when I started to go over this, I was surprised that I had forgot some of the things that happened in each month, because there was just so much, like, it was just a shitter's full moment every month for me. So let's start in January. Before we go over it, I guess you guys read it, so I can't really quiz you on what you think January, the most momentous. You didn't? Okay. So what do you think was the most momentous thing about January before we go over the thing that we selected?
Millennial started trading. Clearly, that's the most momentous thing that happened in January.
God, I thought you at least started in December. Fuck me.
January. That's go date.
Oh, no.
January's go date. I met Stocky January 2.
Oh, my God. Unbelievable. Anybody else?
Yay!
Remember January was the most momentous thing before we go to our thing.
The UK left the political mechanisms of the European Union. There you go.
Hooray!
That was the most
Forget the
momentous
German
thing for
oppressors.
I was telling people at my workplace to call up their whoever manages their retirement, because some people don't have access to it, but whoever did have access to pull out whatever they have, because I know that firm that they're in very well, because I was predicting a nosedive fairly soon, and it'd be wise for them to kind of move out of the way. Nobody listened, so I did the next best thing of what a normal person would do. I took their money. That's all I could say.
Man.
True capitalist. Makes me so proud.
When did we go to the UK? So in January,
That was February. End of February.
I was going to say, we didn't know you yet. We didn't know you in January.
I was streaming in January. Mid-January was when I started streaming finance. At the turn of the year, I switched from, entertainment and game streaming to... Shut up, Gus. Shut your mouth. I hate you right now.
Entertainment. I've just got this Johnny Carson with Teeny's head now floating on top of it. But yeah.
And then I switched to finance, and then we were talking about going to visit GosFather.
We didn't actually. I didn't discover you until late March. That's when I first joined the server.
Man,
and then he wouldn't shut up about you until we all came and met you.
No one listened. I was just like, oh, guys, there's this woman out there that streams, and she knows everything I'm talking about. They're like, whatever.
A woman? You lie.
They're like, I could have believed that someone knew what the hell you were talking about, but a woman doing this, and she's good? I can't believe you. That's like the trifecta.
Some of us were sat in the background going, you really should, change your content, because whenever you talk finance, your numbers spike, beyond whatever we'd been used to before. And I'd started streaming as well in the January, and guess what? It sort of worked. What a shocker.
So what you're saying is GosFather was right.
I've got that on record that GosFather was right.
Oh, no. So many.
In fact, I think it might have been part of the DMCA clip carnage, but there was at least visual representation that GosFather was right.
Oh, God. Just so you
That
guys
makes
have
you
some
eligible
context.
for the tattoo.
Oh, man. Just so you guys have some context, I was streaming at about concurrence of like 5 to 10. So I was struggle busting it, and now we're sitting at least the last 2 weeks, we've had averages of 200 of you at any one time in there. So it's been we've grown a lot this year. But as far as financially based, in January into February, I was thinking that I was concerned because I had seen the repo market kind of. Do you guys know what repos are? So repos are interbank lending, and it's kind of to meet cash reserve requirements inside a bank, and it's the shortest overnight lending rate possible. So those had spiked to crazy levels. I think it hit like 10 or 10%, something stupid. And what you know from market timing is that the best indicator is the spread between the bond yields of short and long dated bonds. And so I was thinking this is kind of going crazy, and that was in October. But you guys maybe saw this all coming, but I did not. I mean, I flew abroad, for God's sakes, in middle of February. Because I'm so long-term focused, I don't really follow stuff day to day. So I know, what time were you telling people that something was coming? Was it January?
February. I started in February. Redemption was January for sure. Redemption started like Chicken Littling that shit in January, and I was like, well, I mean, it's a bit soon.
Well,
yet.
I started talking about it in November about like liquidating and getting ready, but like not fully in. But I started getting more aggressive around December and January.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
I think there was a realization. I mean, the world just didn't accept what was going on. I mean, I remember sitting in the UK in late January, early February, and seeing what was unfolding in at that stage in Italy, and then after that in Spain, and there was still just total denial that it would have the same impact within the UK, and then ultimately, then obviously into the United States. It was just as if the world was in total denial that this was going to happen. And obviously, inevitably, what happened. It was like watching a slow moving car crash.
And just to back that up with some headlines from January, I'm going to go into what people were looking at in two graphics for January. If you guys remember the Australian bushfires, some record-breaking...
Oh, yeah.
See, I knew it was going to do that. Australia basically burned. It was 18 million hectares by March, bigger than the total landmass of entire countries like Cuba. It was, I think it was their biggest bushfire on record, if I'm looking at this graphic correctly. Because
it was. And I remember because the headlines in the US were, the US was like, well, we get fires every year in California. And then Australia was like, hold my beer.
Yeah, like...
And they went.
If you look at this big red dong thing, it was five... It just... I mean, I remember Mocha, one of our stream community members, was just talking about how her family is in farming, and how they weren't allowed back into the entire area for months. And she was just like, don't know when we're going back to our house, don't know if it's burned, and displaced so many people. It killed nearly 3 billion animals, as some estimates say. They've been hit so hard this year.
Yeah, the ongoing thing with Australia is nice place to visit, but everything there wants to kill you. It is a terrible place to live. Wonderful place to go for a weekend.
That's a big hello to all our Australian listeners, by the way, everyone.
I think the next big economic issue they're having right now is that, if I'm correct in this, I never followed up because it didn't affect me to care enough, because I didn't think it would be that major. But apparently China said that they wanted to stop buying Australian coal. I don't know. I think that kind of backfired, but again, I still haven't confirmed this. And yeah, so
there basically is a
China started the fires.
I mean,
Oh,
I wouldn't
God.
say they started the fires. I mean, like I'm saying now. If this is planned, sorry. If this I'm talking about now, like just there are issues now economically because
I'm
coal is
Uh-huh.
China was one of the bigger buyers. But
Sure.
I'm not talking about natural disaster. I'm talking about economic. I don't care about that.
I'll never be allowed
So it's
into
not
China.
bioterrorism.
That's
China
right.
did not start the fires. Can confirm. Okay.
I mean, like they would burn farms before they would burn like just a regular bush.
Okay, let's move on.
He said it.
Just as any year, Australia picked a very, very poor time to pick a trade war with China, because that's fundamentally what's going on now. It's a
Yeah.
tit-for-tat trade war between Australia and China, and it will only escalate further.
You mean
Yeah,
like
China not really famous for taking that kind of stuff lightly.
Nope.
And losing.
China's
Like,
not transparent and caring about other nations? I am
weird, isn't it?
shocked and
Shocked.
appalled. We'll get to that in February and March, though.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
So let's go to another graphic for January. If you guys remember, there were rising Iranian versus U.S. Tensions. In early January, a U.S. airstrike incinerated the car of General Qasem Soleimani, a security mastermind and one of Iran's most powerful military strategists. U.S. officials claim that Iran was planning an imminent attack. In retaliation, Iran fired 2 rockets at U.S. military bases located in Iraq. No one was killed. As tensions escalated, the U.S. House of Representatives passed a bill to try and restrict President Trump's use of military power against Iran without approval. Later, in mid-January, Iran's Revolutionary Guard admitted that it mistakenly shot down a Ukrainian passenger jet responsible for the death of 176 people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that one I remember. That one was like a big oops.
Yeah, it was very unfortunate that I don't know how airports handle flying over disputed kind of not disputed but hostile areas, right? People who are actively having military tension against each other. But obviously it should have been taken off commercial flight
It was
paths.
a registered flight. Yeah, they had done everything right. I remember looking at this when it happened. They had done everything right. They had registered the flight appropriately. It was one guy that pushed a button that shouldn't have, and afterwards he was like, oops. But that oops cost people way too many lives, and they made the other mistake of thinking that Trump was Obama and wasn't going to actually do anything about it.
I think ultimately a diplomatic event was avoided simply because, and this is so bad, but it's just the nature of things. It was a Ukrainian jet. If it was another nationality, if it was another flag carrier, we could have seen a much larger international incident. But the fact it was a Ukrainian registered airliner, in certain ways, like Crimea, the world just turns its shoulder and goes, "Ah well." And that's fundamentally what happened.
If it had been a German, Chinese, American, or British jet,
Yeah.
If it was an American jet, I don't even know. Don't even.
Yeah, you'd have a very large glass bowl.
If it was a Canadian jet, we would be apologizing to the nation that shot it down. So.
Sorry for littering.
Okay, hold up. Whoa.
Wow.
I will not have
have nothing
Canadians
to do with
represented
that
like this. And
statement.
Redemption is a Canadian. He can say what he wants, but he's wrong. When you poke the nice guy too far, the nice guy snaps. And then we go ask the U.S. to do something about it. So don't give me that crap.
Yeah, Trudeau will just be like, Daddy Trump, can you do something about
Yeah.
these bad men hurting us? We can't do it
and he
because we
would've-
don't have a military.
Yeah, he totally would have done what he did, which was bomb their leading general off the face of the earth. I understand. People in Iran love this man, some of them anyway. But full disclaimer, this is only my opinion. Nobody else shares this, but that man not being on this earth is a good thing. I am thrilled that America took action because it kept them in check the rest of the year. We don't know what Trump's going to do. We're not going to do anything else. He might just bomb something for the fun of it. He's sitting on the on the can in the Air Force One and decide he's had enough of Iran's nonsense and blow something else up. I'm gonna leave him alone for a year. We hear this Biden guy is gonna be a lot easier to work with, so we'll wait. Like, ugh.
I think though
a lot of that situation, I think, will unfold of what Biden's attitude towards Israel is, because it'll be Israel. I think it'll be a conflict, more likely as a conflict between Israel and Iran than the US and Iran.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. But just for our finance listeners who may not be so familiar with history, the reason why I did want to bring GosFather on is because I think somebody, I don't even know where I picked this quote up, but I know it's not mine. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And so I think it's really important to look at some of these events, even though I kind of shy away from political events. I don't like talking about them. Everyone gets really upset most of the time, and I just don't want to even deal with it because it's more based on opinion than fact. But definitely there's some basics here you want to kind of understand, which is maybe you guys can confirm or deny, but commerce doesn't take place unless there's peace, unless it's for defense contracts, but most of the time people want peace. So that way commerce and life can go on. So if you have disputed areas or tensions going on or any kind of events that happen like this one, it definitely will have earth-shattering impacts for your portfolio. Go ahead.
Historically, war times are the most profitable times for nations. And that's counterintuitive to a lot of people, but Goss, correct me if I'm wrong, but the massive boom in the U.S., making it a global leader in the economy, shifting the pound off of the global standard, was a direct result of war.
Yeah,
Tesla new all-time highs, by the way.
But we've got to take that with a pinch of salt, because the decline of the UK was simply because Europe was decimated. So it really comes down to geographic luck more than anything. Is that the US, or the continental United States, was out of the range pretty much of any weaponry of the Axis. So right. the United States remained untouched geographically. Its population untouched by war, other than its servicemen dying overseas. The UK, as with the rest of Western Europe and Eastern Europe, was completely flattened. So the entirety of what we would describe as old money was just decimated, because every penny that those countries had to go in not only to fund the war effort that they had to plough in to win the war, then they had to rebuild, and they could only do that with US money. So you're already at a significant disadvantage post-war, and I'm sure we'll go on to sort of how you can draw parallels between coronavirus and exactly what you've just described, which is the shifting of sterling as the prominent global currency to the US dollar, which you could still argue is present today.
So the answer is really, it depends.
It depends on the circumstances. The circumstances of the Second World War are very particular, because you had the levelling of Europe. Europe was levelled. It was basically just ash, whilst the United States remained, intact, completely intact.
But 45 through 50 for Europe was a prominent fiscal period, right?
Because
so
of
that's
US
where
investment,
that notion, Martini, of peace brings prosperity comes from. But the real money to be made, where the real shifts in the tide come from, are during the crisis. Post-crisis, you see the aftermath, which was the recovery from nations that had been grossly affected. But the shift in power happened during crisis. And I only mention that because it's going to be important as we head into what Trump would call the China virus. It's very important.
Okay. So obviously I need a better history lesson, but hopefully this was helpful. As we go into the next month, I thought there was one for February. There is not one for February. But I'm gonna I'm just going to use, what do you guys think for February was the biggest headline?
February for me, the biggest headline was the identification in rural Wuhan of the virus. So the initial report on the COVID-19 came out in February. So the first medical clinic in China to diagnose the virus and warn the world dropped in February. And the Chinese government did what the Chinese government does when something doesn't look great. They buried it. But it is the silent point of history that definitely needs to be remembered on the market, because in February we were all riding all-time highs. I remember the stock guy, for those who are unfamiliar, he's a streamer on Twitch. He was on stream every day. I was there when SPY was 312, when SPY was 313, 314, 315. This was February. America was still riding this Trump train of all-time highs. But the report on COVID had already begun, and the risk to the global community was already there. And the World Health Organization ignored it. China stifled it. The leading physician on it died from it. And it continued to just plow through February. And that's when I put on my tin hat and went, shit's about to hit the fan, folks. Redemption had been saying it long enough. I looked into it. The reports that I found out of China were startling enough to me that I actually liquidated my entire portfolio at the end of February.
At the end of February?
Yep.
So it wasn't...
Called the friends, called the family, said end of February, shit is about to completely disappear from the world. Everything is going to disappear. So be aware.
Yeah, that's when you saw the first real hints of the crash to come, was at the end of February, right? Where you had the
10% drop on the day or whatever.
Yeah, and DJI dropped like 3 or 4% in very quick. I think I was.
What date was that?
I was at the. It was around. I can't remember if it was the day
early
off.
March or end of February.
It was the end of February for sure. It was right around the time of my birthday, which would be the 23rd. It might have been. It was around there, and I just remember it being around then. And it was the sort of first evidence of, because the Asian markets had already taken a bit of a hit, but Europe and the US had been like just coasting along at business as usual until that point. And then it was the first sort of, oh shit, before the one in March. But yeah, it's I'm fairly sure that was I think it was the 23rd, 24th of February.
So I'm looking at the biggest headlines in February, and there is one mention of coronavirus, at least for the first half of February. But I don't think it had hit finance, right? But it hadn't hit like mainstream media, which is what I'm looking at.
Finance didn't care because the bigger headline was all-time highs over and over and over again.
Remember, I said some of you earlier morning call guys would remember, I was saying that this isn't a big deal to the market yet because it doesn't affect America. Until it hits American soil, when you start seeing first cases, that's when it's going to have that effect. Because especially since this is a very unknown virus, that fear alone is going to be enough to drive us down. And I remember the biggest headline for me also was that toilet paper. Everybody was just like going for the toilet paper, and I'm like, are you guys dumb? Like, get the freaking canned goods. Like, stock up on food and water. Like,
Flour,
you can live without
eggs.
you can live without like toilet paper. Like you know. I was baffled. I was so baffled, and I was even talking to my mentor back in my dropshipping days, and he was like, "Yeah, these people are fools. Like, they just walk in, they're all fighting for like the last box or pack of toilet paper, and he just casually like fills up his cart with all these beans and canned goods and everything and water and everything. He just strolls on out. I still remember when those paper masks or whatever, when Costco was selling them, or even the gloves. Like, I think if you guys don't remember, the original price for these like masks, I think they were probably around 10 to 50 cents. Now your base cost for them is like $1 to $2 for those disposable masks and stuff. And I still, that also reminds me, the other big headline was that all these, this will be funny later on, but all these like Chinese nationalists that live overseas, they were instructed by the CCP to go into these stores and buy up all these PPE gear because we don't need it because it's not on our soil yet, right? And to send it back to China just so that they can be safe. They did this all for free, mind you. They literally bought the masks in their hometown and their stores and everything. They freaking like picked everything clean, sent it back overseas. And again, you guys won't know this until a little bit later. You know what the CCP did? They didn't distribute this thing. They took this and sold it back to North America after they realized they needed this for double, triple the price of what these people paid for. That they got all the shit for free. Like,
yeah, they literally sold back made in the USA packaging to the US for triple.
Oh my god. So just to
That's
organize the month, let me go over the headlines chronologically. For those of you who may have not understood what happened week by week. So on February, I'm just looking up the coronavirus headlines. So February 2nd, the first coronavirus death was reported outside China. A 44-year-old man in the Philippines died after being infected. On February 7th, a Chinese doctor who tried to raise the alarm died. This is the one I do remember. This was the headline. Yeah, this is the headline that made me check. So I always check the State Department before I fly, right? It's part of the STEP program. For any of you travelers, you should really register so that way they send texts and they know where you are. It's a good idea. But there were no restrictions on flying. And so I was like, okay, I guess we're okay. When was our flight date? AJ, I don't know if you could type in when did we fly to the UK? Oh, I gotta remember, but let me keep going. February 11th, the virus got a name on February 11th.
China virus?
Oh God.
COVID-19.
Oh, COVID-19. Oh,
that just increases the stigma. Stop it. France announced the first coronavirus death in Europe. On February 23rd, Italy saw a major surge in cases. February 24th.
Italy and Spain.
Do what? Italy and Spain.
Italy and Spain.
Italy and Spain.
They took it on the chin. They took it on the chin hard.
Their health systems got completely overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't. You're talking people in corridors.
They couldn't burn bodies fast enough. Forget healthcare. They could not. The crematoriums were overloaded. They couldn't empty the ash fast enough to get rid of the bodies. Just not since World War II has that been a reality.
Yeah,
in World War II, that was not the same circumstances.
There was a guy that was calculating the CO2 levels in China around like certain areas, like these, because China was denying that they were burning bodies and that the death count was actually a lot less than what it was. But
they only had 50,000 people die from it.
Only,
officially.
yes, that we know. But if you've ever been to China, you know how close proximity people are to everything. Like it's a vast landmass, but any society, I don't care what society you think you live in, you will be in close proximity to someone because it doesn't make sense for all of you to have 2+ acres or something like that in between each other. It makes no sense. So, but he did a calculation saying that there was like X amount. I can't remember, but it was X amount of CO2 in the air, and humans have around this much and this much after they're like cremated, right? They were just like the whole funeral service thing is just like it's a sacred thing, blah blah. But these people were just like shoveling them in by the truckload. Like think Soylent Green, like they're just using these people to throw into the fire just to process them because they just couldn't like put a label or couldn't like separate do one at a time, whatever it is. If anybody's ever seen a cremation, it takes a little bit for those bodies to burn. So, yeah, I mean, not to get too morbid, but like it was a lot. There was like a lot. Like China's usually polluted, but this created an extra layer of pollution on top of them.
This is just making this is unbelievable. Now that I'm really remembering all the stuff that's happening. But just to interject, February 2nd was the date that Trump shut the border with China.
No, it couldn't have been that early. That would have meant that he was actually doing his job.
No, he said he wanted
I
to
almost
do it
forgot that was
earlier, but he
sarcasm.
kept getting pushback. He kept getting pushback saying it was xenophobic for him to do that.
Yeah, it was racist. How dare he?
And then they bashed him for, I think a month or two afterwards, they started bashing him for actually closing the borders. Sorry, not closing the borders earlier to prevent, more American deaths, infection rate, and like all that sort of stuff.
Yep. I only know that because I was in a conference in San Diego in January, speaking, and I remember there were barely any masks in the airport. You could still travel internationally. People were kind of humming and hawing about COVID, whether it was a thing or not. I had the same opinion then that I have now, that if I get it, I get it. If I die, I die. But there were a lot of people that were starting to hum and haw about it. And Trump did that. And in California, the running common commentary was, and especially in the marketing world, which is very left-leaning, was Trump is a racist because he closed the borders. Pelosi is in Chinatown celebrating New Year's, telling people nothing is wrong, everything's fine, Trump is a maniac, don't worry about it.
When do you
Goss,
think...
what was happening in Europe at that time?
Well, as I said earlier on, it was a bit bizarre because we were watching what was going on in Italy, watching what was going on in Spain, and it was just like complete denial. I mean, Tina was in the country by this point, but we
Nobody
entered
cared.
lockdown. And I always remember the date. We entered lockdown on the 23rd of March, and I dropped Teeny and AJ to what was already a deserted London. Because they come up to my house. I live about 40 miles north of London, and they come up and spent the weekend, and we dropped them off, and then on Monday the entire country went into basically panic mode. It was funny, we talk about the supermarkets. I have good memories of MartiniRita running for crates of baked beans.
Beans and rice! Beans and rice!
Pretty much. I've got my beans.
Well,
Ultimately,
the shelves are empty.
Crates of
ultimately, I'm loving it. But yeah, we went into lockdown on March 23rd, and the country, I think, was just in total shock. We should have gone into lockdown 2 weeks previous.
Yeah.
We lost 2 weeks, and it was those 2 weeks that was my government's biggest mistake. It was the country's biggest mistake, because if we'd locked down, we may have been able to contain the virus better coming into the country, but because travel hadn't been restricted, especially international travel, and especially obviously, at that point we're still in, Shenzhen conditions with the rest of the EU. There's complete free movement cross border, and yeah, it was too late. It was too late, and the rest is history.
Damage done.
Damage done. Especially London in the first instance was hit pretty hard, it was. I don't think the country was in a state of panic. I think that's probably overstating it. I think people just puzzled. It was just completely foreign experience to them.
Because historically, islands, Goss, have been kind of a safe haven, right? We look at New Zealand through this and Australia through this. They were able to actually quarantine in many respects because they are an island, and yet the UK missed that opportunity, right?
It missed that opportunity, and also it comes similar to the wartime discussion earlier on. It's down to geography. We may be islands, but the sheer volume of people going in and out of London Heathrow, through the Channel Tunnel, across the Dover Calais, straight across the English Channel. It's that flow of people, that flow of goods and services is huge, and as Brexit's about to show, you can't just switch that off, because it's the way Britain survives, and that there was just no political will to interfere with that, and that's what caused the problem. The country that has protected itself well, ironically, is Ireland. Ireland, right next to the UK, Republic of Ireland, and they've managed to insulate themselves because they locked down really early, and they've had consistently strict lockdowns through this whole period, and still are now. But because of that, there's one thing, and I did go to Ireland in May when some of the lockdown restrictions eased slightly. That was a surreal experience, is that Ireland takes this far more seriously than the UK does. People are genuinely scared in Ireland. But they have much lower infection rates and they have much lower fatality rates. I don't know if that's down to the media or it's just a different mindset with the Irish people. But it's just really interesting to observe a very close neighbour having a very different attitude to the way they deal with this.
Well,
Yeah, they've just ended another month lockdown now, minimum.
really?
T5.
Oh, did
no
they
less.
end it?
They've just entered it. They've just gone back into full lockdown for at least the next month, as of today, I believe.
Oh my gosh. See, I think.
I mean, AstraZeneca vaccine was approved today.
It was.
So hopefully that will be shorter, but yeah.
So do you think? I think this brings up a statement that I want us to either agree or disagree. That the inconsistencies of coronavirus policy between countries, I think was stark, especially February going into March, because I sat there in UK listening to my geo-locked phone, which I realized when you travel, you still get US things, but you really need to seek out the UK things because they're having different policy implementations. My government's saying masks don't work in the beginning, right? And the UK saying you need to wear masks, and then the Koreans, the South Koreans, basically telling everyone that they were already on the
DEFCON 1.
subways disinfecting, doing masks, and starting up their contact tracing program. The stark difference between how Asia handled it, like they're back to normal right now.
That's
not accurate.
There's 2 or 3
Well,
reasons.
back when
I
we were
think.
talking about it in fall, they were back to normal. So where are they now in December then?
They're the same place as everybody else. They're in second wave.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
But we're in
there's 2 or
third
3
wave.
reasons. Yeah, I think there's 2 or 3 reasons behind that though, because the reason is they'd had SARS and bird flu, so they'd sort of gone through this. They'd had their crash
And
course,
swine flu.
and swine flu over the last 15 years. Absolutely, the problem that I perceive is twofold. One, absolutely. Tini, the best thing would be a strong WHO taking charge and leading global policy on the way that this responded. But we had 2 fundamental problems. One, Trump did not trust WHO, so their credibility.
For good reason.
I'm coming on to that. Domestically, Trump blew any credibility the WHO had within the US populace. The problem was that Trump had a point. Is that the level of Chinese influence within the WHO because of funding was disproportionate, to borderline corrupt, and that's the problem. Is the world was left wanting simply because the WHO didn't step up or wasn't then perceived to be a credible body, and that's where you saw this complete disparity of responses across the globe.
Yeah, as somebody in marketing and advertising, I place the blame on the zeitgeist. The mainstream media didn't do journalism. They towed party lines. They clung to the Democratic Party or the Liberal Party in Canada. In North America, they drew lines on political standards instead of on doing actual fucking journalism. And it was the cause of hundreds of thousands of lives. And that's, again, personal opinion. Other people can tie to that or not, but the zeitgeist was responsible.
I think that's an extra subject matter. The one thing I'll say it has disgusted me about the US response to this is it became a political issue.
Yep.
Wearing
Yeah.
a mask became an issue of civil liberty and your political leanings. That did not and has never happened in Europe. It was a very much a fundamental shift in the way that the US or the North American continent, I don't think Canada is the same, but definitely the United States' response was...
No, Canada is most certainly the same. It's a socialist government. It's the same.
But it's a case of you wear a mask because of your political beliefs, not under scientifically this could actually protect you. Whether it could or not, again, that's a viable debate and one everyone should have. But it shouldn't. Politics shouldn't come into it. It's so bizarre.
I mean, like
It's a health
our
decision.
country didn't. Yeah, our country didn't even take coronavirus seriously because, you know, it's the stupidest reason. It's because Trump was talking about it. That's the whole reason. I will not accept any other answer. You know, the only time he actually took it seriously is when because he was still traveling abroad and stuff like that, right? The only time he actually took it seriously is when his Trudeau's wife, Sophia or whatever, she got sick and it was confirmed corona. He's just like, yeah, corona's real and we need to take steps and actions towards that.
I wasn't
Can
looking
confirm.
at that.
First lady came with diseases.
I think
Corona. I'm talking about corona.
I think that this should be a health thing. It should be all this. Oh my God, I can't believe it's a political issue. There should have been. I don't know why we didn't have health people. We didn't have health people in front leading this like in the beginning. It was.
You did. You did.
Yeah,
in the
but
U.S.,
it
the
wasn't-
NIH, the NIAID, the CDC, all of them came out. They said what they had to say. But in the U.S.,
Nobody took it seriously,
scientists
though.
and academics and people on the field mean nothing. Celebrity is everything. You didn't have Kanye West, LeBron, Keanu Reeves, whoever the hell else you want to listen
Gal
to. in the US that's a
Gadot.
celebrity. You didn't have the celebrities calling it out, and Trump was demeaning it. So, ironically, the mouthpiece of North America killed America in many ways. Because the celebrity engine didn't get behind this fast enough and listen to Pelosi instead of Trump, it cost you. It cost the country.
It reminds me of one of the standout moments, and I think me and TD watched this together, and it's actually when Trump had actually taken action. But I remember this press conference on the White House lawn, and it was just basically a parade of the pharmaceutical
Oh my
retailers
God,
in
don't
the
remind
US.
me.
I'd like to hear from Walgreens. This is coming from
Yep.
the president. I'd like to hear from the president of CVS. And one by one, they were pulled up on stage and they gave like a 10-minute speech. And literally, I'm crying with laughter. But if I think about it, it's so depressing.
It is.
It's
because
so depressing.
It cost us lives. Oh my gosh! It was all it was a fucking shit show. Let's just say it. All of it was a shit show.
That's February. Let's go to March.
Sorry, we've gone into March because obviously I've talked about March the 23rd, but yeah, it's you probably need to focus
Remember
on
the 23rd of March.
for the UK. Yeah, you guys probably need to focus on the finance more than this because obviously we're touching on the history at the moment. But yeah, it's obviously then you saw the collapse of travel and hospitality.
Yeah.
So with the finance guys, remember in February, we're still rocking all-time highs as we move into March.
Well, you started to feel it. That was the end of February is when you started to feel it. And the one that I just remembered was oil. It's when you started seeing oil take a beating.
Oh, that was the inverse on oil, wasn't it, Martini? February?
Yeah, end of February is when you saw. It wasn't when it went negative, but it's when you started seeing it
I have a
on oil
negative
futures.
oil sheet.
No, it started to inverse the SPY.
No, you guys are thinking that oil didn't go negative till April. We're not even there yet. Let's go.
No, I'm
No,
not talking about
it-
oil going negative. I'm talking about the SPY was increasing and oil was declining.
Okay.
It started
was
to
looking at
inverse
it.
the SPY.
But
Well, gold was also doing the same thing where it was actually mirroring the SPY. Typically, it's inverse of the SPY, but it started mirroring the
Yeah.
SPY, which was scary. Like it's not like gold is a flight to safety. Like why is it mirroring the SPY?
So let's go over the March graphics. So the spread of coronavirus, you've heard of patient 0, but what about patient 31? Patient 31 actually infected 1,100 people.
Typhoid Mary.
Yeah. One person infected in South Korea, because South Korea has been amazing at contact tracing. They narrowed down that the patient 31 actually infected 1160 people. And actually had contact with way more, but this is a confirmed case of coronavirus count, right? That they actually had a test and they had it.
What did he win?
So that
Global
just,
contamination for all.
it just shows you the rapid, when you don't have lockdowns, when you don't have social distancing, all the things that we do to reduce our risk, that one person can become a super spreader event as opposed to people gathering in groups. So graphic number 4 is just exactly what you guys are talking about, the crash of what they call the beach industries: booking, entertainment and live events, airlines, cruises and casinos, hotels and resorts. And it has booking holdings decreasing 30 billion in market cap, Marriott almost in half, Live Nation in half, Delta Airlines in half, Norwegian Cruise Lines 72%, Penn National Gaming in half, Six Flags Entertainment 66% down. Just kind of crazy. And then I don't have a graphic for where oil started feeling it like you guys were talking about, but I just wanted to go over those two things to back up what you guys were saying.
Yeah, in February, that's when oil disconnected from the SPY and started to inverse it, and people couldn't figure out why.
I mean, as Europe went into lockdown, I mean, obviously just from a European perspective, oil consumption just flatlined. It just completely flatlined. So there was no consumption from the whole of Western Europe because Western Europe wasn't driving anywhere.
And the Middle East.
Yeah. And that was actually one of the things that slipped under the radar, is how badly Iran was hit by coronavirus. But because they're so damn secretive, it didn't hit the mainstream media in many ways, simply because there wasn't the footage, there wasn't the I suppose anecdotes that it was happening, other than the odd snippet of social media sneaking out of the country.
Well, to back up
right,
your oil
March.
thing, lockdown life begins, and so we have basically the percentage of people traveling per city, and you can see the decreases into the beginning of March 4th through the 25th in major cities. Italy had already reduced 86% in movement, usual activity like transit, bikes, cars. Vienna, Lisbon, Istanbul, San Francisco had already started to decrease. Boston, Chicago, Montreal, Paris. But you can definitely see
I
when
remember Montreal. There was fear in Montreal. Absolute fear. In one day, it went from no masks to everybody was wearing a mask. Everybody.
When did our mask order come in for the U.S.? I was
This
in the
wasn't
UK.
an order. This was just people. Yeah, this was just people. This wasn't the government ordering it. This was people. This was just the culture, the macro psychology going, holy shit, put a mask on.
But Millennial, I thought people only started taking it seriously after Tom Hanks and his wife caught COVID.
You're talking about national sentiment. I'm talking about in the city of Montreal. In Montreal, you wore a mask from that point on. Yeah.
I mean, to give a real life example, I work my day job is in transport and infrastructure. So national transport infrastructure use fell by 90% overnight in the United Kingdom.
Wow.
and it's pretty much only recovered probably back up to levels around 35-40% today. But at the time we went 90% because of this transformational the way that people were working. And I'm sure that's another point we'll go on to. But the working from home phenomenon and digital transformation occurred.
Here in London, the movement stopped. It says March 18th was the biggest drop, and then almost into nothing in March 25th. I think that's when you dropped me back off to my...
That weekend, well, I think it was the 21st, so it was the Saturday I dropped you back, you two dropped you two back, and then we went into lockdown on that Monday.
Yeah.
And the mayor of London had already taken certain measures, because obviously he has local powers, and had restricted transport around the city of London. It was a very bizarre time. I mean, just to put it into context, the Transport for London, which is the local integrated transport organisation that runs London buses, metro trains, overground trains, etc., it's now on an emergency funding. It cannot sustain itself. So if it had recently had a £1.8 billion emergency donation from central government to keep it going, but it's bankrupt. It can't sustain itself, and that's been a flourishing, expanding business for like the last 20-30 years. Even under Boris when he was mayor of London, it basically took 3 months to empty their entire financial reserve.
And mobility is so important to income equality. So
it's a big deal.
So, the London transportation system, when I first got there, was I was in awe. We don't have anything like it. I mean, maybe in some other major cities, but I'm typically in the South, and we have piss poor compared to...
I was gonna say, Seattle's probably the closest that you got to a European city. Yeah, Seattle's very close. Monorail, subway, bike paths. Seattle's probably the closest that you have in the U.S. to a European city.
So let's...
But March.
March. God.
We're in March, folks.
I know.
50 minutes in, and we're in
March.
Exiled. Where were you in March? Because we didn't know you.
Oh my God. That's
I was
right.
doing the same thing I was today. Sat going shopping for stocks.
Trading SPACs and IPOs and dog shit.
I basically took a huge part of my long-term portfolio and liquidated it at the end of March to go shopping.
Yep.
So, and that's basically been all she wrote for 2020 is watching my short-term go to the moon.
Okay, so for those that are new, that don't understand, because he says that with a laugh and a joke, and Redemption and I both said it as well, of like, ha ha ha, we liquidated our whole portfolio. Like, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, towards the end of March, where obviously we had the big one for 2020 finance-wise. I forget what the exact number was, but a massive percentage of the S&P was just wiped off in one day, and basically all the equities went on sale if you were in a buying position. Volatility was absolutely insane. And yeah, that was the minute I'd seen it in oil. I was still dabbling in futures back earlier in the year and paying a lot of attention to them, and it was just, you could see the writing on the wall. It was it was almost like a wall starting, where you can see the various changes in the futures markets that are just precursors to cataclysms. So yeah, that was as for what I was doing professionally. I was sat on my butt doing digital marketing, and we did a bunch of work for politicians, so it was full speed ahead there. And but yeah, saw that one coming, and I was already in lockdown there, so my wife and a lot of her family are immunocompromised and considered very high risk. So we kind of went full hermit mode very quickly towards the end of February, I think. And I had this freakish set of events in my life where it was just like I am Mr. Always Late. Like, I'll always turn up 15 minutes after I say I'm going to be there. And it was just, for once in my life, I was ahead of the cue ball. I'd just done like the monstrous grocery shop that I hadn't planned to do. And then 2 days later, I found myself in Costco, and it's like, oh, well, I guess we need some TP, so I'll just get some here while I'm here. And, Costco doesn't sell like a 4-pack. So, we'll get some kitchen. And so it turned out I was basically stocked for 2 months anyway. So it was like, okay, well, don't need to go anywhere. So, yeah, but in terms of investing and finance, it was just, I hadn't quite processed it getting as bad as it did. And I did expect the response in the US to be stronger because we were still fairly, early into it then. And it was like this creeping fog. So yeah, it was like, oh, well, this is going to be, a very quick recovery, and yeah, let's go shopping basically. And yeah, what a wild ride that was.
So this was actually the fastest crash on record for a financial statistic. It was the speed of it. I mean, I think I remember just logging in every day and there was a new halt.
Yeah.
A volatility halt for too much down. Okay. Too much of it.
Honestly, I didn't like that. Like, it felt like, and I told you this before too. Like, I didn't like the halts that were coming into place. Like, I just don't like it. It makes, if you've ever like traded before circuit breakers, I actually understand, like, seen a market without circuit breakers, like in Jamaica. Like, I understand it's there so that people can't dogpile, but at the same time, they're dogpiling. You also have people that know that this isn't something that's just going to go overnight. Like, the SPY is not going to go to zero overnight just because everybody dogpiled on it. There are, one, people who are shorting have to get out. 2, they have to have the shares available. And 3, people have confidence in the companies that they invest in and stuff. So, I mean, like, to introduce that kind of mechanic, it feels like it was artificially held up, if you know what I mean. Like, it didn't actually correct to its natural price. And I think, in the grand scheme of things, it seemed to have, like, held us up just enough to, like, allow people to try to reposition themselves or to try to get out of their whatever the losing positions to get on the other side. But I absolutely hate the circuit breakers, the halts and everything. They're so stupid.
It makes the kill switch very hard to pull.
Yeah. Redemption, normally I agree on a single ticker with you. Mm-hmm. But when it's the SPY, I'm glad those were there. Those halts stop people from jumping out of fucking windows.
It also stopped it from actually correcting to a proper price. And I mean, like, we all know, because we've been, like,
I know you are a sensible person that can literally understand that it needs to correct itself to where it needs to be, and that needs to happen immediately so that we can, rip the Band-Aid off and deal with it. What is. But that is literally what caused the crash in the 20s that caused people to jump out of the windows. Like, that caused global panic, which is why.
I mean, we were all locked at home, so I mean.
Sure, but Goss, I mean, comparatively from a financial perspective, the people diving from windows on Wall Street in the 20s to what happened with the halts in March, what do you think? Which was the better of the two?
Put him on the spot, huh?
Yeah, put me on the spot. I think a cataclysmic event. I think the crash in the 20s obviously seems retrospectively more severe. It depends how we look at it through the modern day lens, because you can say, the lines for soup and the lines for food in the 20s have been replicated, but instead of it just being beaten up old men in ragged clothes queuing for soup. It's just families and SUVs queuing for a food bank. Yeah. So the impact is the same. It's just it's in a modern context.
But the market's at all-time highs.
The market's at an all-time high. So there's the disconnect between the market and the economy. Right. And that obviously in the 20s that there wasn't that disconnect. They were completely welded to each other. What we've seen here is that the market and the economy are two very, very different beasts now, and they will work and operate independently of each other. What's more alarming is now, or may not be alarming to certain people listening to this, is just what we are going to see is a very divided society between the haves and the have-nots, because what the market has, that separation between economy and market basically emphasizes and reinforces is those with wealth and those without, those engaged in the market and those not are the ones that ultimately will end up suffering.
Just
for
as
me,
a good segue for perspective, just for history of pandemics. I think Goss, you mentioned you really like this graphic. COVID, in terms of number of deaths, obviously it's still ongoing, but as far as the biggest pandemic, it is not. So we had 40 to 50 million deaths for the Spanish flu, for a flu type pandemic, smallpox being the biggest in 1520. But in more modern era, it's definitely the Spanish flu in the 1918. The plague of Justinian, which is in the 500s, was 30 to 50 million. We have HIV/AIDS in 1980s of 25 to 35 million estimated dead.
That's the worst modern one.
Right, the worst modern one. Coming right behind, if we just focus on modern ones, Asian flu was 1.1 million in the 60s. The Russian flu, well, that's the 1800s. Let's keep it to the 1900s. Hong Kong flu was 1 million. Let's see what else. Swine flu was the 2010s for 200,000. Ebola was 2015. That was really prevalent in my mind because of living in Georgia. MERS was 850 people in the 2012. SARS was 2000s. Oh, and I did mention the number for Ebola was 12,000.
Right.
Yeah. Ebola, MERS, and SARS were a drop in the bucket. So when people compare Obama's response to those versus COVID, it's like, okay. You're comparing an 18-wheeler to a smart car. Like, not the same thing we're talking.
The irony is that MERS and SARS are worse diseases. They're worse viruses. But that's their problem, is they burn themselves out too quickly. They kill people quickly, couldn't spread. Coronavirus lingers, and in the main, it doesn't kill. So it's very effective at spreading because it doesn't kill its host. And that's the beauty of coronavirus and why it's been so much more effective than the others. I mean, going back to those events you just listed, Tini, the ones you really need to focus on are the ones where twofold. One is where you've had deaths in the millions, and two, where the impact has been beyond the boundaries of a single country or a single region. So that the best ones to, and we've already mentioned the Second World War as a I suppose comparable event to a pandemic. And normally the impact is, and the Spanish flu was very much coupled with the end of the First World War as well. So you've had a huge amount of loss of life because of the First World War. You then have a hit with a double whammy of a huge amount of loss of life because of the Spanish flu, which affected most of Western Europe and certain parts of North America as well. So you've got this situation where the labour force is greatly reduced. Now, that actually produced economic stimulus because those that were left were in greater demand, they were paid more, and therefore had more disposable income. And that in itself drove economic activity and caused basically the boom of the majority of the 1920s before the crash of 29. The same thing happened at the end of the Second World War, which Millennial already touched upon, which is the US boom post-war of 45 to 50, plus the inward investment into, the investment into Western Europe to rebuild Western Europe, as well as rebuilding the Japanese economy as well. And that caused post-war boom because, again, it's reduced workforce, greater demand, more money in your pocket. Everyone's a winner, baby. That's the truth. The problem with our pandemic today is simply it's not killing people. It's not killing people, and the lockdowns, the furloughs, ultimately the redundancies, which we'll come on to now we've reached April, basically means that there isn't that economic activity. And because of digital transformation, because of efficiency, when we return to some semblance of normality, those jobs no longer exist. So you fundamentally had a cataclysmic event like a pandemic where nobody's died, everybody's lost their job, and there's no jobs nor economic stimulus coming out the other side. And it doesn't matter how much money the Fed or any central bank pumps into the system, it fundamentally can't solve that problem, that there are no jobs for people to go to. And that is a scary prospect unless we diversify into green technologies or R&D or whatever, but I still just simply can't think that the sheer number of jobs that's going to be required can be generated in short shrift by those technologies. So it's a paradigm shift in the way that the world economy will respond to a post-cataclysmic event, because every instance of that, at least in the last 200 or 300 years, has led to a sustained period of economic growth. I just can't see it this time. I hope I'm wrong, and I will be happily proved wrong.
Yeah.
But I just can't see it. I can't see it.
So I guess if to continue on with that, then I mean, there's no amount. This is a good segue to April, because in April we got stimulus, right? Which with it comes a lot of debt for the United States. And so, the way I consider debt is it can't fix a solvency problem. If there are no jobs to come back to, if you kick the can down the road, what is there to come to at the end of the day? There was nothing there. So I guess here is where I think people started to have the realization, are you accelerating a trend that was already happening, or are they going to come back? So let's go over the stimulus that was announced in April. In April, we had the CARES Act of $2 trillion. 30% went to individuals in terms of cash payments, extra unemployment payments. 25% went to large corporations. That's $500 billion of it. Small businesses got $377 billion. State and local governments got $339 billion, which is 17%. Public services got 9% in terms of $179 billion. And that's where you find the health programs like CDC, FDA prioritization of drugs, public services, child nutrition, SNAP, stockpiled equipment. Hospitals got $100 billion. And so I just wanted to show you the makeup of the CARES Act, of the first wave of stimulus, to rectify the financial situation.
I mean, this was the first instance where the term quantitative easing, which I had heard before, used in January and February, had changed from quantitative easing to quantitative spending. This is also around the time that I met Martini and GosFather, and the two of them had lost their fucking minds over the idea of a federal government who the entire global economy is based off of deciding they would just print money like Zimbabwe, and that was going to fix the problem.
So
my opinion hasn't changed, by the way.
So if we talk about printing money, we have to talk about the velocity of money. So for those of you who don't understand, is if you print money, it is very dependent on, you have to look at the supply side and the demand side of printing money. Is if nobody's spending any money, then in inflation, or the consequences of printing money that we all really don't want to see, will not rear their head. So I wasn't thinking like today or that month of fear, but rather what would eventually happen to us if the stimulus that we did and that solvency issue I'm talking about, if those businesses don't come back. The Federal Reserve unleashed a bazooka, and they did a historic thing, which was to tell people that they were going to directly buy corporate bonds. They printed a whole ton of money. We have printed more this year than any other year. I think I saw a graphic of 17 trillion. Do I have one here? No, I don't. But my opinion is that we're just kicking the can down the road, and if it turns into a solvency issue, the money that we've printed and the bazooka that we've unleashed may come to not be the right decision.
It's a difficult one because now that we're on April, I can talk about it as well. It was compounded by the complete collapse of oil. So because of the collapse of oil, any perception that the value of US currency, at least, was attached to a commodity was completely eroded, because the petrodollar was shot in the head in April, fundamentally, because it's over. There is the value of the dollar clearly was not linked to the value of oil any longer. So
Aramco IPO'd and flooded the market. Yeah.
So everyone's scrambling then to say, well, what is the value of the dollar? Because that solvency is tied to the perception of value. So what is the perception of the value of the dollar? The conclusion of the conversations we had earlier in the year, the conclusions that I still hold today, is it's tied to debt. It is simply now the value of debt. It is this vicious debt cycle that the federal banks, not only just the Fed in the US, but also the ECB in Europe and to a extent the smaller countries, they're all perpetuating, is that their currency is now tied ultimately to the value of debt. Now, it's we can look at that in a more micro state, which is the debt bubble of 2008 in real estate. Are we lurching towards that same situation, but ultimately with the whole economy at stake? And that's where I'm just going to drop. That's where the ghost of crypto appears, because people are saying, right, well, if the dollar isn't where my money's safe, where is my money safe? Is it safe in gold? Is it safe in other commodities? Or is it safe in Bitcoin? And that's the sort of activity that's been driven and perpetuated by, in my opinion anyway, that this constant quantitative easing policy and printing of money leading to quantitative spending, because it's not, you're absolutely right, it's not just the pumping of money into the economy, it's basically saying you will spend it, go and spend it, absolutely go and spend it, or we'll spend it, we'll go and buy ETFs, we'll go and buy bonds on behalf of the state. It's crazy.
It's mental, as you would say.
God, I remember around this month, I think I was studying basically habits of, like, especially with the whole hype, because this is also when the rise of the Robinhood traders started exploding, because people had nothing to do, they got free money and everything. And I was studying also at, like, work from home stuff that was COVID proof and stuff like that can be considered COVID proof. Especially when it entailed, like, if they were, I was using a dividend as a slight benchmark to see how they did. Like, you guys know I'm deeply in Iron Mountain, but the other one I looked at that I missed, and I told Rita about this, but I think she kind of just dismissed it because she didn't understand what the company did or any of the, like, other, like, intricacies of that company, because it's complicated. But I picked Overstock, and I kept thinking, okay, well, people are gonna, I know everybody was gonna work from home, and then we were talking about, like, how people who had money fled the major cities because of, like, their potential supply chain problems, et cetera, right? And they were just set up in, like, new homes and areas, and I was like, well, they're gonna need furniture. And I thought, okay, well, because I used to drop ship, I used to drop ship some furniture too. I was like, okay, well, Overstock's publicly traded, Wayfair's publicly traded. Overstock, I think at the time, was under $10, And I told Rita, I was just like, hey, Rita, do you think this would be a good uh, um, investment? Because people are going to move to these new places. They're going to need new furniture, new everything, right? Especially with the houses, because housing, it's kind of hard to get into, especially with the housing index the way it is, and us kind of talking about like people not being able to pay their rent or mortgage. But the people who have money, who can and have already moved, they're going to need furniture. They're still going to need a bed at the end of the day. They're still going to need a chair to sit in, right? So I picked Overstock, but I didn't get into it because I couldn't really get a good grasp on it. It was $10. It went up to like it was $20 when we started talking about it again. And I told Rita, I said, "Hey Rita, and this is going to be later into the year." I was like, "Hey Rita, I think Overstock's actually a really big contender." I knew this a little bit a while ago. Wasn't very publicly known, but Overstock takes all sorts of payments. All sorts of payments include Bitcoin. They were one of the first stores that I knew, online stores that I know, to actually take Bitcoin payments. And what got even better was they bought an ATS, a Bitcoin ATS. Automated ATS stands for Automated Trade System, and they bought like the entire company to process their Bitcoin transactions. So you can exchange your money for Bitcoins, or you can pay for your goods in Bitcoin, and it's all processed through their ATS, and it's all gravy there, right? They actually had a spin-off of that into the OTC market. So you had the main OTSK, and then you have OTSK something else after that in the OTC market. All I can say is, my God, like that thing, just biggest miss of the year for me was that. Aside,
It's $53 now.
That was like the prime point, especially when I was looking at it around this time. I think it was like $7. It was like literally nothing.
See, you're always early to these things, and but it's a good segue into what happens in May. I didn't come around to the work from home kind of portfolio until May. I looked up when Millennial and I did a breakdown, and it's everything that you said, redemption, except you were a month earlier than me. I don't know about Millennial. All the months are running into
Redemption
one.
and I were talking about the big long in April.
In April? Okay. I didn't come around till May. I took a full month for me to come around, I think. And
April was the big long, which essentially is the same concept as the Big Short, for those of you that seen the movie and know it, where the entire thing collapsed. But this was the other way. Redemption and I and Hitch and Colonel had identified that with quantitative spending, you essentially eliminate the possibility of the Big Short, but instead you exacerbate the problem and create the issue of the big long, which is the entire market loses the ability to accurately price, target, understand the underlying market cap. All of that goes out the fucking window, and nobody knows what they're trading anymore from March on. So in April we were talking about that, and then in May, after we had been talking about it for about a month, Martine and I sat down and did the Maslow's hierarchy thing, which has been damn near, like, we're talking 99% accurate to date.
yeah, there was a few misses. I actually rewatched it. There's a YouTube video if you're curious to see what we were talking about then and to fact check us. But it was the big long, the great realization theory that everyone would move out of the cities, and how would that impact stocks. And also we had how do you long-term invest, and what the innovation cycles were in that. But yeah, I checked that was May 22nd, I think, is the date of the YouTube video. Yep. That we had posted it, but we were talking about it the week before. It hadn't gotten edited until that following week. But just to go over some graphics, May 2020, the world works from home. Zoom's market cap zooms up to 48.7 billion. Southwest versus the top airline market caps. Zoom became the value of all the airlines, basically.
Exiled, did you have Zoom? I thought you were one of the guys I knew that had Zoom.
Yes, I did. I bought Zoom in late March, and then I had to do it in April.
That's a shit-eating grin you're hearing right now, folks. That
Yeah,
didn't hurt to have Zoom.
I kind of split my strategy. I went heavy into industrials because being British, I'm inherently pessimistic, and so I look for things that are going to persevere.
He's not wrong.
If this gets worse, and it was things like, so my three superstars other than Zoom, I'm out of Zoom now, but Zoom got so crazy through the year that it was just, this is ridiculous PE. I have to get out of it. But yeah, with industrials, it was John Deere and Cummins, Caterpillar, stuff like that, because there's certain industries that are just going to persist, and people still need food and houses and stuff like that, and that's what I started looking at. And then on the other side of it was the work from home plays that everyone was looking into. And yeah, Zoom was a huge one. You could just see it. So from digital marketing point of view, it became a verb. It was just everyone suddenly was talking about it like Skype 10 years ago. And
even
it was
politicians, right? Politics
yeah,
started to
exactly.
erupt in
And you
April.
see it when you start seeing it on Bloomberg, and it's got the little thing in the chyron like, oh, this is a Zoom call. That's time. Then it's gone mainstream. It's like it's a good time to get on when it's a new emerging company like that. And I mean, they've been around a decent clip anyway. They've been around a long time, and it even caught them off guard. I read recently about their management team were basically in there doing shifts and sleeping on the floor because they were so overwhelmed with the sudden surge in popularity. So, but yeah, it was one of the ones I played. I'm not mad at it at all.
They became the Q-tip or the Kleenex of work from home overnight, right?
Exactly, instant ubiquity. It was just crazy. Like I said, you start seeing them on Bloomberg and CNBC and whatever your outlet du jour is, and the chances are the interviews that they're having with, the talking heads, it's on a Zoom call now. Once upon a time it was Skype and Teams, and all of a sudden it's Zoom. That's a huge thing for me. But yeah, all those things, Logitech, another one. It was just like, you can't buy a webcam and we've talked about a lot of the ones I played this year in previous podcasts. But yeah, it's all the work from home ones. But I did kind of want to indemnify myself against that level of degeneracy I was playing, and that's where my safe bets were industrials.
April's important because it's also the month where we all forgot the China hustle, and stocks like NEO, Yumc, Luckin Coffee, TEDx, JetX, GSX, all of these China hustles started to explode in April. The rest of the world was reeling from coronavirus, and China seemed to be either falsely reporting their numbers or accurately reporting their numbers, and absolutely quarantined and unaffected by this disease, in which case China dollars seemed to start to pour into the market, and that helped Tesla as well, but for the large part it was the China hustle that came back to the stage, right?
I think history will look back on April 2020 as being the year equities markets just started doing crack. It was just, that catalyst was so huge. That's if you look at how accelerative SPACs and IPOs became.
Yeah. Oh my God.
It really started taking full speed ahead in April, and it's tumbleweed effect ever since. It's insane. But yeah, I think that's going to be the turning point, was like, because you had that quick bounce off the bottom from the March crash, but
it was
then
actually
really
March 23rd.
It was. But like you sort of had that, okay, it's coming back up, and then if you look at that chart and then you look at the volumes the week after, insane, absolutely insane. So
Yeah, FA went out the window in March, guys. FA died.
it
that
was
day.
just
done.
just
And
hook
I know
a
there's a lot
dart
of
at
FA
TradingView.
traders listening that are going to give me crap in the comments, and that's fine. I don't care.
Valuations.
FA went out the friggin' window
Yeah.
when qualitative spending became the government policy.
Yeah.
Come at me. I don't care. Leave it in the comments. Hate on me if you want. As of March, your candles, your stochastics, your trending patterns, EMA, SMA, all that shit went out the window. It didn't make sense. From that point on, it made no sense.
So you mentioned Tesla, just to keep going into July, right? Because we need to get going here. Tesla becomes the world's most valuable automaker, and it surpassed the market cap of Toyota at the biggest of in July. Sorry, in July at 183 billion. And I remember I had a ton of people coming into my stream into April and into May and coming into July, not understanding why tech was taking off and why the stock market was diverting from what they thought was the economy. And it was just an incredible rise. And I remember talking to you about going headfirst into Tesla because China was showing that they just had such big plans. Tesla became the only American company to own their factory, to actually own things in China. And I was like, I want to go head first into this. And I had to talk over with, are people really going to be buying cars in the pandemic? And sure enough, they did. I went headfirst into Tesla, and it's been an incredible run ever since. That market cap of 183 billion in July, their current market cap is somewhere in $500 billion. So they've had, it's just unbelievable. That's my graphic for July. July 2020 also was marked by big tech's dominance. The FANGM stocks, if you guys know that acronym, which stands for Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, M is Microsoft, totally diverged from the S&P. To end 2013 through 2020, it's up 500% versus the SPY of 110%. So
Angie.
yeah, and we've added Tesla now to that, since now it's part of the S&P 500, and we call it the Fat Man G. We just saw, well, we can talk about that in that month, but you guys all went for a huge risk appetite. I instead avoided the stay-at-home portfolio, and I did it in my own way, which I felt was safe. I went into FANG heavy and bought a put against my portfolio. A lot of people are coming into my chat asking for not the FANG. Twitter was an example that I really remember. And I felt like stay at home, nobody's going to be looking at Twitter that much. And they haven't really solidified a model anyway. So that's what I did. I went heavy into FANG, bought a put. I literally bought a put probably at the bottom. So that was hilarious, but it was just $2,000, and it definitely exceeded my gains out of the bottom, and especially with Tesla and its crazy run that it's done.
July's when I swore. Well, I didn't swear off, but I stopped trading bio exclusively. July is when I started to recognize that this market. Yep. So up until July, from January to July, I traded bio only.
It was also around the time when
Only.
Uber was dying and everything, and everybody was saying, yeah, Uber was dying. And I think I told you that this actually looks like buying. I think the Saudis are buying this thing. It doesn't make any sense, but Saudis do as Saudis will, right?
You were right.
It's like $20-$30. I was like, this looks like buying.
Yeah, July is when I stopped trading bio exclusively because there was too much opportunity outside of bio. So that's when I started picking up WPRTs, DGLYs, waiters, spaces, anything that looked like an emerging market that had trend and hype behind it. Because as of May, April, that's all the market had become. It was retail traders, day traders, it was Wall Street bets, it was whatever has a hype line behind it, expect it to run for 2 to 3 weeks and you can make a profit on it. And that's not financial advice. Again, I just want to reiterate that. But in July, that's where I made that shift, and that's where my portfolio really started to explode.
So let's talk about the end of summer. So August, we had the Beirut explosion. If you guys remember this,
That was bad.
You guys remember all those pictures or the video of it exploding?
I remember my comment that morning.
I thought it was fake when I first saw it.
Yeah, me too.
You guys remember my comment that morning, and it sounds cold, but it's on brand with what it's actually on brand with the way the market is. But I said that morning, everybody was like, yes, it is a horrible situation. Stuff like that should never happen. But at the same time, like the average American in America, or the average investor in America, they don't care about what happens overseas. And that's the reality of it. Like, the market did have a little effect, and I remember people asking me, like, oh my god, is this the trigger for the next sell-off or whatever? I'm like, no, it's not. Like, this is something that happened overseas. It doesn't affect America and what they do and whatnot. It sucks what happened. Hopefully, they can send aid there, but for the most part, America is just like, yeah, it's just business as usual for us.
One thing, though, and I absolutely agree with you, Americans are very U.S. focused. That's a resolution I'm going to take into the new year, is learn way more about the globe, especially with Asia seeming like I shouldn't miss what I think is a huge growth stage for Asia. But August, we also had that captured the attention of U.S. people, was the wildfire season for California and the West Coast. You guys remember the pictures of everything turning?
Yeah, the orange red sky in California.
Oh yeah.
I have a lot of friends and what could be considered family from Oregon from the time that I lived there. And so I had people sending me the inside of their homes that were black with smoke.
Really?
40 people inside of a house because it had an air purifier. Yeah. This was something that you got used to when you lived out there. It was every year this happened, but this year was especially bad because the government of California was negligent in facing it, because they were trying to simultaneously manage stroking the Democrat schlong for the election, negating anything Trump had said about the coronavirus through the spring, and then also dealing with the issue of these widespread fires. And it spread up the entire West Coast. So anybody from Washington State all the way down to California knows what I'm talking about. But California is largely the blame for it. And it's always a travesty. It's coming in the same way that Canadians fear winter. Californians and Oregonians fear fire season. But yeah, May is when it starts, and you ride it all the way through into September. And it's people lose their homes, their livelihoods, everything that they've ever known and loved. And you just bite the bullet. If the fire takes you, it takes you.
There's so much that's happened this year. Unfucking believable.
It's also the month that we lost Chadwick Boseman, Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. But it was also when I think the DNC also cemented. Yeah, it was also when the DNC cemented Biden as their pick, right, for the party.
Yep.
That's not.
Yeah,
that is August. I thought not November.
Yep. That's August.
Okay.
We wouldn't get a vice president until
Yeah.
October. But yeah, we got Biden then. People were still thinking it was going to be Bernie in July.
Yeah.
Huh.
So any other financial topics for August? I feel like August was when SPACs really took off.
I think
When did the second stimulus come?
I don't have that up here, which
August,
is
I thought.
kind of crazy that I don't.
I think it's August.
Yeah.
I think August is when the second stimulus came.
Oh, that makes sense with the SPACs.
Yep.
August was the
August
lull.
is when I'm almost positive August is second stimulus.
It was the eye of the storm because all the first waves.
I think it was also Oh no, it was
Yeah.
next month that I was talking about. Never mind.
Yeah. By August, everybody had been tired of lockdowns. They were like, fuck it, we're going outside. There's sun, there's beaches, there's barbecues. That's what we're doing. We're through this. We're American. We're tough. We're going to go through it. Second stimulus is here. We've got our checks. Everybody wants to see a rebound, so we want a rebound. Colleges started to get ready to go back in, and we had those massive COVID parties at colleges.
Actually, I think this was
where kids were getting together, getting drunk and banging before the semester started so they could get COVID and move on.
Oh my God.
That was, people are laughing, and I'm not joking. It may sound cold and callous, but go ahead and look back. Google
yeah.
it.
No, I
It's
remember
there.
that kid.
I know
They
what
were-
happened. I just think it's
In August,
stupid.
there were massive parties where people got naked. They banged each other in the hopes of getting COVID.
Oh God.
I think this is
It
also
happened.
around the.
I know.
It's
just-
ridiculous to say it, but I'm not the one who was at the parties making
I think
it
this
happen.
is also around the time when I was also talking to you guys about, because like you guys know I love Costco. I went there and I was like, the meat and everything, the expenses seem to be more expensive this year going around, and we were talking about the supply chain, and I think I was talking to you, Millennial, about possible shortages, especially in meat, and the possible rise of Beyond Meat, because
Oh my God, BYD.
yeah, like I remember telling you about this because like I was like, okay, well, I know it's a joke. This fake meat stuff is a joke. I still remember that Colbert skit where he's just like, there's a scientist out there creating meat from plants. It's a combination of shit and meat. What did you call this again? Schmeat. So there was that, and I was just like, I was thinking, okay, well, if that's the case, meat's gonna rise in price, especially with livestock and everything. And I remember asking you, Reed, about the like, is there any sort of ETFs? And I didn't find any ETFs. I found an ETN, which I don't like because ETNs are very thin in volume, and I just generally don't like the nature of them. But we found that one livestock ETF called Cows, I think, or Moo or something. And that thing had already doubled in price. Like the futures contracts for livestock have already doubled in price. And I'm like, shit, I'm late to the party on this thing. But we didn't actually see the effects because the effects were trickling in afterwards. But the real play in that month was actually Beyond Meat going into winter.
I know. This year was the year of like qualitative FA, right? Like knowing what people are going to do, the psychology. I mean, it was just incredible. You know, you're not going to, I remember thinking like, I'm happy with 15% a year. And now I think I'm sitting on 60 to 70% in a long-term hold portfolio just from averaging down on FANGs. And so, but just in the interest of time, let's continue on to November. I'm going to skip a few months for the election.
Well, let's just do Q4. Let's do all of Q4.
Yeah, let's just do all of Q4 at once. So into November, we have the presidential election, and that captured the minds of everybody in the U.S. And
We also had the vaccine race.
Right, the vaccine
We had
race.
the new justice.
Into December,
We also had the new justice.
we have.
Yeah, Supreme Court.
FLOTUS
Brexit.
and the POTUS got confirmed with Corona, and then he mentioned Regeneron or Regenerex, and explosion, and then to talk about like vaccine distributions, and they were talking about like how we can get these vaccines out by the end of this year with a check in place as well.
Yep. We had the rise of Bitcoin in Q4. From 13,000 to 28,000 now today.
I mean, we were also still talking about second lockdown.
No, I think we're at 28K today. Oh, we're literally almost hitting
28,000.
30K. Oh, I thought you said something else.
We were also
Okay.
talking about like second lockdown and stuff like that, and second week.
Second wave. So we had talked about that back in May with the Maslow's hierarchy, that I was expecting to see a second wave of COVID, a variant strain that would emerge in December, January, February. And sure enough, what do we have coming out of the UK today, Goss?
Goss may have go.
Sorry,
right,
no,
GosFather. That's
I've
absolutely
got off
right.
mute. I've got off mute. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we've seen well, we've seen a few things today in the UK. Not only obviously we've got AstraZeneca vaccine approved and will go into use as of Monday at 2 million doses a week, they estimate.
Did you say 2 million a week?
They reckon they can vaccinate 2 million people a week, because the AstraZeneca vaccine is not as complex to produce as the other two, and it's not as effective. It's not as effective as the Pfizer and the Moderna, but it's much easier to store, and it's much easier to administer as a result. So it can just be kept in a refrigerator for prolonged periods. So it's a game changer in terms of mass vaccination. But the scary thing, the scary thing for us is now 78% of the country is under severe lockdown again. And we now have more people in hospital in the UK than at any other point during the pandemic. And we recorded, for the size of our population, we recorded 918 deaths in the UK in the last 24 hours. Those numbers are back up to where we were in the dark days of April and May. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, and we'll see how quickly the vaccination can take, the vaccines take hold. As long as the research over the next 12 to 14 days doesn't show that the new strains are non-responsive to the vaccines. So
it's okay. The AstraZeneca CEO came out almost immediately saying that their vaccine is actually highly effective against the new strain.
It works better. It works better against the new strain. Go figure. It's almost like they've been testing it against it the entire time.
They have no idea. The official government advice was that the new strain was only submitted to the research labs at Portland Down, which is the big virus and germ warfare labs in the UK, today. So the results of vaccine effectiveness across the board will not be known for at least 12 days. They are confident, and I'm glad they are confident. I don't think they can be anything but confident, but they don't know. They have no idea how it pits against the new UK strain, against the South African strain. All they know is that the original strains at the moment. We all hope that it's effective and there isn't some sort of hitch or problem, but we don't know. We don't know yet.
The beauty of that is the EMA yesterday said, we don't see the AstraZeneca vaccine getting approved anytime in the near future. They haven't even submitted the necessary paperwork to begin the procedure. And then 9 a.m. this morning, we get the alert, AstraZeneca vaccine approved in UK. It's like, right. Okay. No, it's not the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. It's that the head is officially up the royal ass. Nobody is aware of anything going on anywhere. And for somebody to come out and say, officially our stance is this. Well, officially your stance is you are throwing darts at a board blind and hoping they stick.
So we'll know. We'll know. I mean, in a way, by proxy, Britain has made itself the guinea pig. It's made itself the petri dish of the world, because by fast tracking these virus approvals, because all three are now approved for use in the UK. We'll see. We'll see quite quickly at short shrift how we get on.
On the upside, Brexit's approved, so you have global travel through UK, right?
Yeah, if any airports or ferry ports are open, it'd be fine. But the whole
that's
country's in
awkward
lockdown.
sarcasm, people. We don't want anybody from Europe traveling anywhere.
Not allowed. It's ultimately Britain is just, as far as travel's concerned, is closed at the moment. So and for justifiable reasons. I am slightly perturbed by the world's reaction that suddenly this is a UK strain when it's been in circulation since September.
Can we start calling it the UK virus?
No, they already are, to be honest.
Oh my god!
But it's just fun. It's fundamentally it just spread like wildfire in northeast London and parts of a place in the UK called Essex.
The Cockney virus.
It's pretty
I'm
much
hoping
the
they go
Cockney
with
virus.
British bubonic.
The only way is Corona. But yeah, it's fundamentally that's where the major spread has happened, and therefore it's suddenly you saw all these countries shutting their borders with the UK immediately, and I'm thinking, Denmark, you've had this disease this strain since September. Same with you, Australia. It's just that Britain, because of the density of London and the ineptitude of our public officials, haven't been able to control it properly.
So GosFather has confirmed it is the Cockney Corona.
It is. Well, I think that wasn't me.
Corona.
That was Exiled. But ultimately, yeah, it's the South African strain is scarier because it's even worse. So and that's
Wait,
a real
there's a South African one?
There is a South African
You're
strain
kidding
that is.
Oh yeah, no, it's
pretty
different.
I
And
can't
that one has a
handle
higher
this.
mortality rate.
Yeah, it's the South African strain that everyone is worried about.
What is the mortality rate?
It's higher. So the UK one is more
infectious.
contagious,
Right.
more infectious, less mortality. The South Africa one is about the same for contagious, but higher mortality. Which in
Double?
Africa,
Are we talking double, like
not
magnitude?
double, not double, but more.
Oh my. Fuck.
Yeah, which when you factor in quite how many direct flights you can take from Johannesburg to London, is
Yep.
pretty scary.
Johannesburg to anywhere. If you're flying into Africa, the African continent, oftentimes South Africa, Cape Town, Johannesburg is your
Oh
your
yeah,
layover.
it's
That's where
a
you're
massive
going into.
hub. But when you've got the UK directly with the UK strain directly linked to the
Yep.
South African one, it's like
Whee!
it's like a conduit. It's a Tesla tunnel.
Corona cocktail.
Yep.
Let's take a little bit of everything, throw it in there.
Yeah, it's yeesh. So
Yeah.
So
Pair that with Biden, Yellen, and stimulus in the U.S., and we've got a wild 2021, folks.
yep.
You know, this
Go
is-
Which I guess is the
inflation.
ultimate question, right? 2021. Is it the vicious sequel many of us have predicted, or is 2021 the hope, the light, and the joy that many people want it to be?
I'm going to
Well,
be that
we're gonna-
pessimistic, Brett. It's a drip feed of pain.
Yeah.
2021.
yeah.
I'm united with my British brethren in
Of course you're
in my
pessimistic. Of course.
outright pessimism that it's gonna get a lot worse before it gets better.
As a
but-
Commonwealth supporter, I'm going to join the two Brits here as a proud Canadian and say Queen, country, and COVID, and say things are going to get a lot shittier before they get a lot better.
Yep.
Redemption? How about you as a fellow Commonwealther?
I mean, I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing, which is predicting people are gonna do stupid things and just make money off of them because they won't listen.
With stupid games.
And on that note, to America?
You know, I mean, it's just incredible what has happened. It's part of. See, the thing is, it's kind of crazy because the first half of this year, I didn't fly back till summer because everything was so fucking crazy over here. I was like, I was stuck for 3 months. Okay, because I was
Well, you
willing.
had COVID, right?
I got
Both strain.
COVID. Well, suspected. I have a positive antibody test. I do not have a PCR test during it because I literally got sick during, like, I think it was March, and there were no tests. So it was like you come to the hospital and you can get a test, but if you're at home, just if you get really bad, then you come in, right? Which obviously we know that it's a little different now. We know a lot more, but I was stuck for 3 months. I opted on staying for 2 more months because shit was like just too crazy. And it's part of my decision not to travel as much. Not because I'm scared, but because, you know, I saw how much travelers could end up spreading it. I don't want to contribute to the pain. I don't want to risk my family. I didn't go home for the holidays. So I'm here in Texas, and you know, I'm really scared for everyone. I've seen the pictures of bread lines, basically what amount to, and charities are running out of money to service in the middle of this third wave. And now we're talking about another vaccine. I mean, another strain that is even worse. And I don't know that it's going to be at all positive for 2021. So I agree, but we'll see what happens. I think this is the year of me changing my mind. You guys all laugh that you were right is the funny thing that everyone wants me to say for everyone. And I have a pending bet where I have to eat a gooey duck because I made a bad bet that Airbnb wouldn't go to 100 billion in valuation. So it's the year of humble pie for
She
me.
was wrong, by the way.
Thanks,
Everybody was right but Martini.
Oh, stop! The live audience is... Oh my god. What is the actual name? It's not a gooey duck. Somebody
I thought it was a
introduced it to me
geoduck.
as a gooey duck, but it's really
Geoduck.
geoduck. Thank you. So
Gooey
I have
duck
to eat
is
a
better.
geoduck as my humble version of pie. And that rounds
it's gonna
out
be a
my
humble pie.
2020.
Oof. Oof. New Year's night. Tune in live as she consumes the gooey duck.
Oh god.
All proceeds go to attendees in need.
Is that Tendies Acquisition Corp that we're
Yes. DGen Capital Management 2021.
So, in the interest of time for a 2 hour and 15-minute podcast, let's round it out with one last question. Would you want to live 2020 over again? Yes or no in the house?
Yes.
Yes. 2,200% increase on my portfolio. I could not be more thrilled that I entered the market this year. Yes.
Hell yes. Like,
So we got a yes from Millennial. What
hell
about
yes. I
Redemption?
mean, like, what was it that you said at the beginning of the year? You requoted, like, never let a crisis go to waste. The amount of, this is also one of the first years I did macro, but the amount of, like, predictions that I've made with the degree of accuracy too that people were going to do something stupid was just phenomenal this year. Like I'm just annoyed that I had to pay the taxes for the gains on my account, but like for the most part, yeah, I would definitely. I
Hashtag
mean,
first
I
world
wish
problems.
it was like this every 4 years, but you know.
What about our UK brethren?
As an investor, in a fucking heartbeat. As not great human, but average at best human, I could kind of live without the whole death and fear.
Make us all look like
but-
bad guys now.
Yeah. really.
I'll go for the stuff that I can control. Yeah, fuck yeah, it's been fantastic. I've been doing this a long time and never had a year like it. It's been, I firmly believe, a one-off. I think next year will be the year of the. Well, definitely. Well, for me personally, I flip-flopped a little bit on my strategy going into 2021, and yeah. So it's for me, it's going to be the year of the long volatility coverage, risk management strategy. I think where I'm starting to basically cover my ass with derivatives. But yeah, fuck yeah, I'd do this year again in a heartbeat. Yeah. I mean, everyone wants a crystal ball, but if I had it for this year, I'd sell everything I own and put it in my trading account.
Yep.
Goss, what about you?
Absolutely fucking not.
There's the guy who doesn't trade.
Good on you, man. Better than us all.
He traded though. He traded. Don't tell him that he did. What was it? Buying Lloyd's Bank?
That was a small comfort to a man that is not a trader by profession.
I want to go to work. I can't. I want to see my staff. I can't. But more importantly, to make you all feel like total bastards. Just the pain and anguish I've seen on the face of my wife when she's come home from work, when she's watched COVID patients die in front of her like she did yesterday. Yeah, it's horrible. And nah, this year can go do one on every single level for me. The only bonus I can take out of it is, I've met a lot of cool people on the internet because of lockdown. Fine folk like yourselves, and obviously started streaming myself. But yeah, those positives do not outweigh the negatives in the way that it's affected myself. Yeah, I can't take the positive because I'm not a trader. I don't have skin in the game, so to speak. So it's been fascinating to watch historically. But when you study this stuff, you never really want to live through it, do you? No one wants to live through a world war.
It's almost like frontline journalism. It's just you've got to take the hit to the head to be able to tell a story accurately, and it sucks. Every bit of it sucks. Absolutely.
So yeah, it's going to be a personal opinion. So for me, it's a definite no.
I'm so split. I'm so split because I lost 4 people that were very near and dear to me this year, and I still don't know how I'm standing, how I get up every day and go and try to care about people's financial well-being every day. And a lot of socializing has creeped in this year, especially in the Discord. I got to meet so many cool people from around the world, expanding my horizons about what Asia is really like, what Europe is really like, and correcting me all the time. And I love it, but I miss those 4 people. My mom, my one of my really good college friends died of COVID, actually. And my aunt and my uncle died. I have a very big family, but it's been crazy. And part of me doesn't want to redo it, but I don't want I don't want to get rid of the positive things that has happened this year. I would never trade not meeting the 4 in here this year. So, but I don't know. It's just, you're right. It is frontline journalism. You don't want to live through it, but I'm happy it happened. I feel so terrible about all the people that have lost this year. Man.
Yeah, it's like it's a very, very difficult thing to process. Like where everyone deals with negativity in terms of losing loved ones and stuff. It's just been so many in such a short space of time, and yeah, it's been a absolute torrent of bad news from start to finish. So. But that being said, I mean, you do have to take the positives where you can in times like this, I think. And, in many ways, we're fortunate that a huge part of our lives collectively is obviously investing. And it's the one place we've all largely been able to draw positivity from. So it does feel kind of villainous to be profiting and reaping the rewards of what's been a frankly shit year, but I'll take it. It's there hasn't been a whole lot else to celebrate this year, so socially it's been better than expected. We've got this great little community and done way more than I expected to personally, and everything else can go fuck itself.
Exactly.
That's basically it. It's just look for the positives where you can, I think, and it's it's almost like a release in that regard.
And with that,
I'm a big fan of, if the ship is going down, I'm gonna be the mofo that grabs the cello and plays a sweet ass riff on it, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't want to be the guy crying as the ship goes under, because you're boned either way. I'd rather be the guy that sings that sweet swan song into the finale. But couldn't be more thankful for all the folks that I met throughout the year, the games that we've had, the losses that have happened. It's that much more like 2021 to the fullest.
I'm glad that Millennial is actually. I actually found someone that actually and Millennial, I don't know if I actually said this to your face ever, but you were one of the fastest people I've ever seen pivot with their trading strategies. I'm actually glad that someone actually listened and kind of turned their trading stuff around, because like when you started, and I had to bring up Uber again, but like Uber, you were convinced that Uber was going to go to, you were convinced that Uber was going to die, and then you know, when it turned around and I said that yeah, no, this looks like buying to me, and then as it went on, you took you took it on the I forgot the expressions, but it's like you took it on the chin or something like that, and then yeah, and then you're just like, fuck it, I'm going to just focus on bio. And I was like, yeah, this is also around the stage where it's just like I've stopped discouraging people to do stuff, because I've tried to emphasize more on proceeding with caution rather than discouraging them, because like I can't tell you how many people have told me like, oh, look at this thing, you know, and it runs up like 1,000% or whatever, right? And they didn't get in because it was based on my wording. But I basically, like, you were one of the first few people that I've started when I started doing this, where I just said, listen, if you're willing to put like at least a day's pay after expenses and everything, like you do your retaliation and everything, and you know, you could sleep on, you know, missing out on just losing that day's pay, because it's only a day's pay. It's not your year's pay. It's not like your life savings or stuff like that. And you actually made it work very well. And the other thing I'm glad about is that when I found Rita in March, and the problem with the like when you get to a certain like professional point, not a level, but like a certain professional point, is that you are introduced to stuff that people have no clue of what you're talking about. It sounds like conspiracy, because in most normal investors, they're only looking for a couple things, which is, how do I turn this dollar into $1 million? And you know, there's a variety of answers, but like I never got questions of like, hey, have you ever heard of this tool called like data miner or whatever, right? And that was the thing that, you know, me and Rita connected with, because I was just like, oh my god, she understands data miner. She knows about the dark pool. Oh my god, she knows about like the ECNs and everything I talk about. Like it was such a breath of fresh air for me.
Well, with that, I'm gonna end the stream. I'm super glad we all found each other, and that you found Millennial, because I think we found the one guy who listened to Redemption. But
Hey,
oh yeah, we're
platinum.
still in platinum.
That's true. That's true. There
Okay,
was two.
fine.
There was
Actually,
two.
there's a third, but I don't want to mention his name. But they started talking about it afterwards.
Oh no.
Well, with that, that's the Slap That Ass podcast. We may have to do 2021 New Year, New You Trader, and another one, because 2020 just engulfed the whole time. But I think this was a great podcast. We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.